Hi Lions! I am going to read you this book today. I have never read it before, so we're going to find out what happens together. I'm going to do it over a couple different videos, so generally one chapter per video. I got it from the library and I thought it looked very punny. Do any of you guys know what a pun is? It's kind of like a joke that you have a play on words, so you'll have a word that has two different meanings, but it sounds the same. So I'm going to explain some of the ones that are on the cover. So first, the celery stalks at midnight. So stalks, this part of the celery, that is a stalk. But also, stalk can mean to sneakily follow someone. So maybe in this book, some celery is going to sneakily follow somebody else. Who knows? Not me. And then up here it says, who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of artichokes? So if you were to see someone and they're a really, really good person, you could say, she has a really good heart. Or if you see someone that does a lot of terrible things, you could say there's evil in their heart. And that means like the figurative hearts, like the shapes that we all think of as hearts, which we feel with. This heart can also be just a chunk of artichoke, though, because we call them artichoke hearts, and they are delicious if you have not eaten them before. Last one before we get started, it's a Bunnicula book. So it's kind of like a mix between Bunny and Dracula, and as we all know that Dracula is a vampire, so if you look closely, it looks like this bunny has red eyes and some fangs, so it seems that maybe this rabbit is in fact a vampire. So, looking at this cover, what do you notice? What do you wonder? What do you think the book is going to be about? I don't know, let's find out. The Celery Stalks at Midnight by James Howe. Chapter 1, The Disappearance. And there's a picture of a cat and some dogs. It was not a dark and stormy night. Indeed, there was nothing in the elements to foreshadow the events that lay ahead. Chester, Howe, and I gathered on the front porch for a bit of post-dinner snoozing. I was stretched out on my back, my paws dangling at my sides, thinking of nothing more than the meal I had just eaten and the chocolate treat I hoped might still lie ahead. After all, it was Friday night. The one night of the week Toby was allowed to stay up to read as late as he wanted. And that meant snacks. Snacks to be shared with his old pal Harold. That's me. Chester, curled up on an open comic book nearby, purred contentedly. Only Howie, who was growling as he chewed vigorously on a rawhide bone, seemed unable to relax. But all that high-strung energy was natural, I suppose, considering he was still just a puppy. "Boy, this is the life, huh, Uncle Harold?" Howie asked between growls. "Umph," I replied, with as much vigor as I could muster, which wasn't much. After all, I wasn't a puppy any more, and had used up most of my energy long ago. I listened to the sound of the children playing down the block somewhere. "There's nothing like hanging out on the porch after a good meal," Howie went on enthusiastically. He lifted his quivering nostrils to the air and sniffed rapidly. So pausing real quick, it seems that these characters are dogs and a cat. I'm guessing that Harold is a dog, Howie is a dog, and Chester seems to be a kitty. Right. Ah! Smell that night air. What's that? Somebody's having what do you call it? What is it when they cook outside, Pop? Chester raised an eyelid. "A barbecue," he said with a yawn. "Oh, yeah. Gee, I have so much to learn, but you and Uncle Harold have taught me a lot already." He gazed admiringly at Chester. "Thanks, Pop," he said. Chester raised his other eyelid and shook his head. He turned his gaze from Howie to me. "Why does the kid insist on calling me Pop?" he asked. "I'm not his father. I'm not even a dog. If anyone around here should be his pop, it should be you, Harold. Dogs of a feather should stick together and all that." Howie chuckled. "That's a good one, Pop. Dogs of a feather. I'll have to remember that one." I didn't even attempt to answer Chester's question. After all, Chester, who doesn't hold dogs in particularly high regard, did seem an odd choice of a father figure for a young pup. But Howie, who had recently come to live with us, had formed his attachment right away, and there was no breaking him off of it now. Too bad the rabbit can't come out here, too, Howie went on with a nod toward the living room. It's not fair, his having to be cooped up inside that cage all the time. I'm afraid that's a rabbit's fate, I said. At least for a domesticated one. Though I must agree with you, Howie. I feel sorry for Bunnicula, too. So domesticated means not wild. So the rabbits you see running around outside, they're wild rabbits. But if someone has a pet rabbit, that is a domesticated one. And now it seems that we have met, or at least heard of, Bunnicula. Save your sympathy, Chester muttered. Bunnicula is no ordinary rabbit. If he ever got out, and let's not forget that once upon a time he did, Harold, he'd only stir up trouble. Are you still convinced, I started to say, but stopped myself, not wanting to alarm young Howie of Chester's theories of Bunnicula's true identity. Chester looked mildly surprised. Of course I am, he replied. Can there be any doubt? You saw the evidence yourself, Harold. Howie looked back and forth from Chester to me. What are you two talking about? He asked. Oh, nothing, nothing. I thought of a cuddly little bunny rabbit who'd become my friend, of the hours we'd spent snuggling in front of crackling fires in cold winter nights, of the time I'd saved him from Chester's attempt to starve him to death. That rabbit is a vampire, Chester said matter-of-factly. Howie's head jerked up. The rawhide bone tumbled down the front steps. What? A vampire? He gasped. Then another moment's reflection. He asked, What's a vampire? I felt obliged to step in and save Howie from the seamier facts of life. A vampire, I explained, is the person who calls the rules during a baseball game. Don't confuse the kid, Chester said, bathing a paw, and don't be such a Pollyanna. Turning to Howie, he said, A vampire is a creature, once dead, who sucks the blood out of other living beings in order to live. Howie's eyes widened in amazement. What? He stammered. So far, our friend Bunnicula hasn't attacked people, Chester went on calmly, or cats, or dogs for that matter, but he has drained the juices out of vegetables, turning them ghostly white. He came to live with us when our family, one night, the Monroes went to the movies, I said, picking up the story, and found Bunnicula lying in a dirt-filled box on one of those seats. Don't forget which movie, Chester interjected. Dracula, I conceded, but that doesn't mean nonsense. In this case, everything means something. Don't you think it's significant that shortly after Bunnicula's arrival, the vegetables in the kitchen started turning white? And wasn't it strange that they did so during the night, the only time Bunnicula wasn't asleep? Wasn't it stranger still that he could get out of his cage by his own powers, without even undoing the lock? And what about those marks found in the drained vegetables? 2 tiny holes that matched up perfectly with the rabbit's oddly spaced teeth, or should I say, fangs.